Hi, welcome to this edition of Oakland Is. I'm your host for today, Gabrielle Wilson. And joining me is Cephus Johnson, who is the uncle of Oscar Grant, who is affectionately known as Uncle Bobby, and Dr. Cecil Brown, screenwriter, poet, and author, who is also a professor at UC Berkeley, who is part of a collaboration to bring a seminar to Oakland to the East Side Alliance called Cell Phone Justice. And I'd like to welcome you both to Oakland Is. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
So tell me, Dr. Brown, how did you come up with the idea to put on a seminar regarding cell phone justice?
Well, after hearing the Oscar Grant incident and the fact that he himself had taken an important photo on his cell phone before he was, I guess you could say, murdered, it was important to bring the awareness of this incident to the general public to show how important it was that this cell phone video camera is important to justice in the African American community. And I met Mr. Johnson, and he's such an impressive person that I thought it would be of interest if we could come together and celebrate with other scholars who've written on the importance of the cell phone and the fact that Afro Americans have been able to use this to show what justice really is. And
now
so
this is an interesting movement, because it's like when the incident occurred on January 1st, on that fateful day, the public already knew that, how powerful the cell phone camera is, and they took it upon themselves to take pictures and document things, and now it's like the university or the Ivory Tower is catching up. My question to you, Dr. Brown, is why do you think the cell phone camera is so important in litigation now, or in the pursuit of justice? Is it because we wouldn't get justice without the pictures? Is it something like that?
Yeah, I think that's true, because what happened, as you know, African Americans were not used in courts because their testimony was not accepted by the powers that be. And until the Rodney King incident, people thought that what the police said was true, and they were not believing what witnesses reported. The written report or the oral report was not accepted. And because we live in a culture that is so visually oriented, the actual pictures of the cops perpetrating injustice on a victim became very important. Now we can see it, and this, I think, is as important as were the dogs that were leased let on blacks in the South in the 60s. When that appeared on television, it changed the opinion that most people had about the South and racial equality. And I think the cell phone, especially in this particular instance, and we got to give credit to Oscar himself, because he took the important photograph. And I would like to defer to Mr. Johnson on that too, because he has some very important information about how that took place in the court when they presented to the jury.
So are you saying if people take pictures, they may not be admissible because perhaps the chain of custody gets compromised by the state?
Well, that might be a reaction, but the truth of it is when you have a picture as flagrant as the ones in the Oscar Grant case, it's really hard to deny it. And they can probably, filibuster on it the way they like, but the truth of the matter is we all saw the injustice perpetrated. So it's their reaction to what we know to have happened, because we saw it with our own eyes.
Now, cell phones are just so popular that just about anybody can have one, and everybody and we all do. Most people carry cell phones now. Do you think that this is a tool for justice? Like you just protect yourself and help protect, you know, the area around you? Like you go out and you leave your car and then you lock the door. You know, you make sure you have your cell phone just in case something occurs and you just need to document it. Are things really that bad now?
I think that's going to be the case in the future. As things progress, there will be more and more people making sure that they have a visual, an ocular proof of this. And it's not just in crime, it's also in things that people observe. In sports events, in the, you know, in the audience of a tennis match the other day, somebody had an altercation. Someone had the cell phone. They were able to capture who threw who down the stairs first. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's going to play a significant, important part. But again, what I was inspired by was the act that Oscar Grant himself, not what we did, but what he made sure that we saw, which was the taser being pulled out by the policeman. And my inspiration comes from that single act that he did. And so that's why I was inspired to try to get as many people to talk about the importance of the cell phone video as possible.
So you just answered my next question. I was going to ask you, how did you come to call Cephus Johnson, and what are your motives, what are you looking to get out of the seminar? So I'll just ask you then, yeah. Cephus, how are you going to participate as a panelist on the cell phone justice panel?
Well, from the past 2 years, from our experience being in court and coming to see just how important the videos as well as the picture taken has become in the case in itself, has really brought to my attention to be a part of this. You know, it's been brought to my attention that 12 states right now is outlawing the use of a camera or video camera when a police officer actually is involved in a stopping of an individual. They basically is saying that it's interfering with police officers' job. So they're outlawing this in many states. If you go to the internet and you look up cell phone and the use of picture taking of police officers, you're going to see many that have been arrested for utilizing their cell phone and telling the truth of what that officer did at that time when they made the arrest. So this is really significant, and it's very important because we're talking about a system that right now is trying to deny us our right to utilize our camera in a way that actually helps us and protect us from abusive police officers. You know, Oscar, that picture he took not only said to us as a family that I'm not lying about what's happening on this platform, but look at this picture and see for yourself. He took a picture of Johannes Mesley with his taser in his hand, as the young man on that platform had said all night long, that Mesley ran around pointing his taser at each individual up there, threatening to tase them on the platform. So he absolutely knew where his taser was at. There's no ifs, and, or but, or discussion or questions concerning that. He pulled it out several times. Oscar, last picture on his camera showed that. And it was painful to see, but it was the reality of what happened on that platform, and it spoke to the truth of what happened on that platform. So raising the awareness of how important cameras are today, especially utilizing them to help protect us in the court of law, is significant. I mean, we got cop shows that videotapes us in the wrong all the time, just to justify their arrest. Why can't we, as common citizens, not justify an illegal arrest by taking pictures of this officer making this illegal arrest?
Yeah, and that's damaging for young people to see over and over black guy being jacked up by the cops, you know, in compromised situations just on a daily basis on those cop shows. I think that's negative propaganda targeted at young African American youth. But to get back to the matter at hand, I just say that at that fateful moment when your nephew knew what was going on and he wanted the world to know what the truth was, the cell phone was a viable avenue for him to take, and I'm so glad he took it, and it made it difficult for Messerly's defense to carve some sort of argument, and all they could come up with was the taser, but I don't see how those jurors were able to make the conclusion that they made. Well, you know, no blacks were on that jury, and that was not an accident. However, I think there's a letter writing campaign. So people, after the show, we're going to give you a phone number to call so you can actually get involved on the letter writing campaign. But I think the seminar is a really good thing because people will be able to get proactive about this before sentencing comes down. So
Can I add?
That said, go ahead, Dr.
No, I
Brown.
just wanted to add one thing about the perception that most people had of the cop pulling out his gun. As soon as it was advertised that he pulled it out in mistake, everybody assumed that that's what happened. I was in LA talking at a dinner party, talking to friends, and I said, did anybody notice the picture that Oscar Grant took of Messerly with the taser? They said, no, what picture? And they made me think that I was somehow fabricating this. And I said, no. I said it to them, and I said, I will send it to you. Oh, please send us the website. We want to see that. Well, I did. Another time I was at talking to someone, and I mentioned that had they seen it, and they act a little bit outraged that no, he made a mistake. He reached for his taser and pulled his gun out. What they did not see, and what the world should see and know, is that no, he knew the difference between his taser and his gun because Oscar Grant took a picture of him with the taser in his hand.
No wonder that evidence was suppressed.
I mean, in the press. I'm not talking about suppressed or suppressed in the court system, in the general public. And so one other added reason for having a seminar on this is to point out to everybody who is within listening or hearing or seeing, they should really consider this case, because here's a case of whites using the technology to tell a lie when the man from his grave showed you the truth. And everybody should look at this case again and bring real justice to what happened.
Well said. You know, when the truth gets compromised like that for the benefit of the state, we're in a dangerous situation. And it's not like I want to see, you know, criminals or thugs taking over our state. No, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see rogue cops killing people and not being held accountable. And what one defense lawyer in Berkeley, Ocean Newman, said, and I'll quote him, he says, "What are black mothers to tell their sons when you can go out there and the police officer says, put your hands in the air, and you put your hands in the air. The officer says, well, get on the floor. You get on the floor. You do what the cop requests, and you still get shot. And then worse than that, they are not held accountable. Now that is what we are discussing here. So let that be clear. And then about your friends you talk to in LA, the people on the film circuit, or I don't know if they're Hollywood types or what, but everyday folks, many of which I came across, and I became outraged when they saw the video footage and they wanted to find an excuse for Messerly. Well, it's that people want to believe in the state. They want to believe that cops are good. They want to believe cops are out there to protect and serve. Well, no, they're not. Not always. You know, but there are good cops.
And if I can add, it's a sad note when the system, especially in a criminal proceeding, will take a video or a picture and tell the jury that what they see in this video or in this picture isn't truly what you see. So what we have is experts to give you a frame-by-frame movement in this picture to tell you what really is occurring in this picture or in this video that really contradicts what you think you're seeing. And we saw this take form in the courtroom. The defense hired a so-called videographer expert who then told the jury that what they saw in that video was not what occurred on that platform. this is what occurred. And then he proceeded to explain to the jurors that Oscar was resisting arrest. As you can see him moving and squirming. You know, I can go on and on and on to talk about what the experts saw. Totally opposite from what we see. And what it told me from that experience is that if you have money, you can buy people's perception. Because we all are will have more tendency to believe what we hear as a so-called expert say. Failing to trust our own individual knowledge or intelligence or even view of a situation. And so because of this preconceived idea that we have that all police officers are good, when they are shown actually in a bad act, it goes across what we've been taught to believe as them being good to now say, is this really an officer that is doing bad and I can see this? And then an expert comes in and say, no, that's not what you see. So I say all that to say that, you know, this is of extreme importance that we recognize that we have a power today to shoot back with a camera or a video camera to lay down as evidence about what we claim as mistreatment or some wrongdoing taking place. And as long as we stand firm with that and we do that, I can see we gaining ground on bringing accountability to the police officers. Because we got to remember, they love showing us on TV and in pictures doing wrong.
Yes.
But they're not the perfect ones, because there's many of them that do wrong. I'm not speaking on all police officers, but the fact is that there are some rogue police officers that need to be brought to the surface, and part of the way of doing that is the community arming themselves today with cameras, video cameras, and standing guard with one another in our community and say that if you're wrong, we will take a picture and show this as evidence.
That is true. Did you want to chime in on that, Dr. Brown?
Only to add that, well, we're going to give the address and the date and the time of the event.
Well, let's do that. It's going to be October the 10th at the East Side Alliance. And
from 12?
It's from noon until 6. Noon until 6 p.m. And there's a website. Is that correct? There's
a website, yeah.
Now, I didn't have the opportunity to go to sit at the trial myself, but so there was one thing your sister said, Reverend Wanda Johnson, about the judge and, you know, that whole situation, that scenario. Those people are going to have to answer to a higher power. But in the meantime, I think the seminar is a really powerful, proactive stand, and people have their cell phones and they document these acts. You never know when one's going to occur, but you need to take that and trust what you have, and don't let some expert, should you find yourself on a jury or so forth, you don't let anyone, you know, turn you around from the truth that you see. A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Exactly.
And so to let some expert come in and deconstruct the truth for you, and you know, that's mind-boggling, and that's wrong, you know, and that could come back and bite you later in various ways.
If I can add, Rodney King case in itself was a good example of how the juror was tricked into believing that what happened to Rodney King didn't occur. We all witnessed these police officers beating this man and beating him, but yet the jurors came back with a not guilty plea on those police officers. You know, so that's a sad note to see police brutality openly being done to an individual, and yet we have a jury that will come back with a verdict that is totally opposite than what we see. You know, this is so important, in that we need to be aware that the system, government, state officials, are standing behind the police department, initializing a campaign to take away your right to utilize a camera in a sense that protects you when it's a hearing that you may have to go through. I've read on the internet individuals taking pictures of officers conducting their arrests and then that individual get arrested for obstructing justice, and then must have to go to court to fight for his right to take a picture. You know, so we need to recognize just how important this is. It's in 12 states right now that has been affected. And if we don't pay attention to what's happening, it will actually take place right here in the state of California.
Yeah, and don't wait, people, until something happens to you and your loved one or your 2 or 3 friends. You have to take these situations as your own. As Dr. King said, unless we are all free, none of us are free. And I noticed, if anyone's familiar with the Innocence Project, they go around looking at faulty convictions and seeking to get them overturned. And these are death penalty cases that they deal with. And they have exonerated, they have caused many individuals to become exonerated based on their work and faulty, you know, unlocking and unleashing the faulty police evidence and state's evidence. And do you know the state never apologizes? They're so arrogant. They fight it, you know, tooth and nail to the bitter end. They don't want to admit mistakes. They don't want to show that they've got a rogue cop on their hands. They work in concert, and you know, it's something that we're going to have to get a handle on and work together with, because you know, we don't want a police state either. We don't want criminals running us, and we don't want the state running us, and we're not going to get any help. We're going to have to be proactive and do it ourselves.
Right, exactly.
Oscar Grant has allowed us as a community across the United States to recognize how important it is as we as a community come together to stand up and to speak to the issue of police brutality. This is a window that's open, and this is the time that we must do it as a community. You know, and so our voice needs to be heard. You know, so we urge everyone to speak to the issue of police brutality, to stand up and allow your voice to be heard, because there's many mothers who have lost their sons or their loved one to police brutality. And September the 25th at City Hall Plaza, from 11 to 4, I'm having an event that is specifically for empowering mothers to recapture that spirit that dwells within the mothers, to empower us as men and sons and grandsons to stand today, to come together and to address this issue that has been plaguing our community for so many years. You know, we're talking about from 1976 to 2000, over 8,579 black and brown men has been killed by police officers.
Wow.
Every single one of those police officers have not ever been sentenced to any time in jail.
For Mesley, go ahead.
Mesley is the first officer while on duty to be found guilty of a crime or murder that was committed, involuntary manslaughter. Even though it was the lowest, it actually opened the door. November 5th is significant, not just here in the state of California, but across the United States.
And the world. This is
in the world.
Has international implications.
And what we as a people, the United States across, want to see is that police officers be held accountable for the murders they commit in the communities. And so November 5th is a significant date because it's going to tell us openly whether we have any rights or not. Mesley has been found guilty for involuntary manslaughter, which is 2, 3, or 4. With a gun enhancement is 10 years. He should get no less than 12 years, and the max is what we hope for, which is 14, which is a small price to pay for a murder committed. But it's our hope, of course, and prayer that the system does not deny us that right to see that police officers can and will be held accountable for the murders they commit.
Well, I thank you for your words of wisdom and words to challenge people to come out and support on those dates and to be proactive about this. And I just want to say thank you to both of my guests. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cephus Johnson. And thank you for joining me for this edition of Oakland Is. I'm Gabrielle Wilson. To get in touch, you may email me at missgabriellewilson@yahoo.com. And I thank you very much. Welcome back to Oakland Is. I'm your host for this segment, Gabrielle Wilson. Joining with me today is Marcus Flowers. He is a water enthusiast, and he has knowledge about a very beneficial product. You know, water, we don't really think of as a product, but I'd just like to welcome you to Oakland Is, Marcus, and tell us about your water, please.
Thank you so much. Well, what I do is I actually dispense a particular brand of water that's actually a trademark from out of a special device actually made in Japan. The corporation that produces the device has been around for 25, maybe 35 years now. And the water has become such a big part of the new health wave that there's so much articles that's of interest that's being written now. There's so many people that are promulgating it. It's hit a rave in California, New York, Chicago, Hawaii, and a couple other places at this point in time. I actually have been introduced to the water over a period of about 4 years now in terms of actually drinking the water. I've known about it for about maybe 20-something years or so. It was originally used for health issues in the hospitals in Japan, and it has had a litany of accolades because of its ability to restore degenerative health and diseases.
I know people around the Bay Area now are touting the praises of the water. Could you tell us more about how people could get involved with it? It's alkaline based.
It is.
You know, bottled water is not regulated. This water you have, how can people get a sample of it?
Unfortunately, right now, the device, the way of getting the water is only through the device, and so there are quite a few distributors now in the area who actually carry the water through the devices. I'm one of them, and there are several others. They can actually contact me at their leisure at 510 area code 878-8248. Once again, 510-878-8248, or even email me at greenmed, GREENMED, like in medicine, 67@yahoo.com, and I'll be glad to actually give anyone free samples of the water for up to as much as 21 days, and give them an opportunity to see how the water really reacts within their body. And I think they're going to get a really beneficial and wonderful experience.
All right. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
I hope to see you again. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me, Gabrielle Wilson, and all my guests on Oakland Is. Until next time.